Hello and welcome to the Rogers Brief. I'm Adam Rogers. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Today was day 47 of the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings. This is Thursday on a week now that has been building up to the appearance tomorrow of the spouse of the gunman, Lisa Banfield. And the week has been featuring different discussions and evidence has been coming out about Ms. Banfield's experiences, the history of the gunman, his history of violence towards Ms. Banfield, towards others, and the history of his family. All of these things sort of building up into Ms. Banfield's appearance tomorrow, which we'll talk about. But today was sort of a lull in that momentum. It was a quiet day, relatively speaking, in the proceedings themselves with two roundtables. Sort of a calm before the storm, a chance for everybody to catch their breath before Miss Banfield's appearance tomorrow. So yes, so I'm going to talk about the two roundtables, and then what I thought I'd do, because of the way that Miss Banfield is going to be testifying tomorrow, the fact that she's not going to be cross-examined, the questions are all going to be asked by the Mass Casualty Commission lawyers, and given the fact also that the commissioners have said, because the commission counsel are there to represent the public, that they are there to ask the questions that need to be asked. So I have some suggested questions that I think would be appropriate cross-examination or direct questions that I think the Mass Casualty Commission lawyers should be asking of Ms. Banfield. So I'll go through some of those after I talk about the two panels that were held today. All right, so the first one, they were both about sort of predicting mass shooters, the psychology of mass shooters. So the first one was actually called Prediction and Prevention of Mass Casualty Events. And it featured Professor Benjamin Berger from the Osgoode Law School in Toronto, Dr. Myrna Lashley from McGill, Montreal, Professor Nicholas Rose from King's College London, Professor George Schmuckler from King's College London, and Robert Wright, Nova Scotian, Executive Director of the African Nova Scotian Justice Institute. Dr. Wright, somebody I've encountered a number of times now. He was a witness at the Desmond Inquiry on behalf of the Health Association of African Canadians. Made a valuable contribution then. I've seen him speak at the law school as well. Very well respected Nova Scotian. Okay, so this panel is sort of talking about how do we predict mass shootings and what is out there as far as predictive tools, psychological tools, questionnaires, things you can analyze about individuals that can give you a sense of their propensity to violence, the likelihood that they will commit violence. And if anybody's seen the movie Minority Report, the Tom Cruise movie from 2002, where there's the precognition of criminal events with these beings where you'll be able to see the future, see the criminal event, send the police in, prevent it. Well, if we think that is the goal of any sort, well, we are very, very far away from that. The experts today were talking about tools that had error rates in the 85 to 90% range, that their best testing was wrong, false positive 6 out of 7 times, that depending on, the degree of specificity with which you're asking certain questions, all these things. So there's an overwhelming risk of false positives when they do these predictive exercises with the best testing that's available, according to these experts anyway. So it brought to mind for me anyway the Blackstone doctrine. People will be familiar with that. It's better for 10 guilty persons to go free than one innocent to suffer. That was applying to executions, but criminal activity or sanctions, generally speaking, sort of accepting that ratio, the Blackstone ratio. So, but with these risk assessments, if any action if we were thinking of doing anything in advance predictive, the risk assessments would be sort of the inverse of that. 9 innocents would be suffering for every one that was found to be guilty. So anyway, they seem, of course there's risk factors like ownership, access to automatic weapons, alcohol, certain mental health challenges and such things. But Otherwise, the predictive factors don't seem to be, the tools, that is, don't seem to be very effective. So that's that. One other thing that I noticed, Robert Wright, I think he probably has honorary degrees. Dr. Wright spoke about the resources, and he didn't say all this very directly, but his point was this. The resources that are being directed at this question through the Mass Casualty Commission compared to, say, the resources that are being used or were used for the inquiry into the Home for Colored Children. Sorry, hard to say that, even though that was the name of the place. And sexism, the battles against racism and sexism in Nova Scotia, just the sheer resources that are being put into the Mass Casualty Commission as compared to those he alluded to in a very polite way. So that was the first one. So I look at this and I think, well, what's the point of all that? I think the RCMP will certainly point to this and say, well, listen, criminal intelligence predicting who might do what is very difficult, and so, yes, a few things went wrong, missed a couple of things, but give us a break. I think what the Mass Casualty Commission, what I think of this when I see is interoperability problems. Information not being passed from one police agency to another. We saw the criminal intelligence bulletin that just didn't seem to be acted upon because it was coming from Truro to the RCMP and into Halifax. So all that stuff. To me, it just bolsters an argument for a singular unified police force, or at least common platforms if there's going to be still remaining various municipal units. All right, so that was the first session. Interesting in certain ways. Second one was dealing with the psychology and the sociology of perpetrators of mass casualty events and the definitions to be used when talking about mass casualty events. And this featured Professors Tristan Bridges and Tara-Lee Tober. I think I said University of California, Santa Clara last time so they testified earlier this week. It was actually U.S. Santa Barbara, if that matters. It also featured Professor David Hoffman from University of New Brunswick and Dr. Angelique Jenny from the University of Calgary. So, talking about psychology, sociology of perpetrators, lots of discussions about the academic debates that seem to be going on within the community that talks about such things, about the definition of mass casualty and whether it should include domestic violence cases, or whether that's a subset that should be studied on its own. So there was that kind of a debate that seems to be going on. So the experts that we were hearing from today self-identified, at least, that they were in the minority that agreed that proposes that the definition does include events that are domestic violence. As a sort of a dominant causal effect of it. So that was interesting that the experts that were brought in took that view. Other debates that seem to be going on are whether the definition of mass casualty requires that the perpetrator be doing so on the basis of some ideology or some personal grievances. So there was that question as well debated. This is all kind of interesting stuff. Lots of time taken on the debate about what a mass casualty might be, how the definition has evolved over some time. But you might think that, okay, well, let's turn our expertise attention to this event that we're studying, the events of April 18th, 19th, 2020, and talk about how it fits into that debate, that ongoing debate over the definition of mass casualty, whether this is considered a domestic violence sort of dominant event, or if that's a feature of it, or whether that has, what significance that might have to how it's defined or how it's considered. All of those things, and how it should be studied. You would think maybe that would be a good topic for these experts to go through. But as we've seen with other experts that have been brought in by the Mass Casualty Commission, they talk about their general expertise in the area of expertise, and at no point are they asked or are they seem inclined to volunteer any opinions on the events. It seems as though, in fact, I would say that they're told we are not going to talk about these events specifically. So really limiting factor of today's discussion, and then a limiting factor of the expertise generally that's been brought into the mass casualty. So those are the two panels today. I want to talk a little bit, I want to get to Miss Banfield and the questions I think she should be asked. First thing, I always want to ask somebody as a witness what they've done to prepare. We've seen witnesses come in and say, well, I haven't read anything. I haven't looked at anything. I haven't thought about this in 2 years. Okay, well, you expect a certain degree of, memory loss at some point because if something's not being reinforced. Others, they have, I've been watching this every day. I've been watching proceedings. I've read my statements over and over again. I'm ready. So you get a different expectation of what the person is going to present to you in their evidence. So I think it would be important first just to know what Miss Banfield's done. She's got a very good lawyer out of Toronto looking after her. Was in the news today explaining why he thought it. This is James Lockyer from Toronto, nationally known lawyer, certainly among lawyers anyway. I've mentioned his name before. So saying in the news today that there shouldn't be cross-examination of Miss Banfield, and that's justified because it might further these conspiracy theories. So anyway, interesting way to phrase that. He knows he wouldn't be saying any of those words accidentally. So something to think about. But good to know how much preparation she would have done. I would think it would be extensive, given that she has this good lawyer that she's working with, and so I'm sure she's going to be ready for every question that comes. But just good to ask her. The other thing I'd want to know up front, just before getting into any details, is the terms of her restorative justice. And I think it's fair for her to talk about that. What was it? Was involvement in cooperation and testifying? Was that all part of the arrangement that allowed her to get her criminal charges dropped? Were there anything else, and has all that been completed? So those be fair questions. By the way, just thinking about it, and I'll talk about the other questions in a way. There's going to be a lot of pressure on whichever lawyer is chosen to ask these questions. It's a really delicate balance for whoever's chosen. I mean, I expect it'll be Emily Hill, the lead lawyer for the Mass Casualty Commission. But especially if it's any other lawyer, they'll really be under pressure. This is a big moment. It's a delicate balance. You have to have some respectful restraint talking to a person who has certainly been accepted by the commission and many others as a victim of domestic violence. So you want to be respectful in that sense. On the other hand, because there's no cross-examination taking place, and of course that's controversial, there's been comments from the families, participants, and the public. Because of that, the lawyer's going to feel that they need to apply some pressure too, to in some sense apply some, or show a willingness at least to go after some elements of Miss Banfield's story, to follow up on certain questions, those sorts of things. So I think you'll see some of that as a way of justifying the procedure that's been chosen. But if it doesn't go well, that lawyer, there'll be lots of people pointing fingers and turning not at themselves. So there's some pressure there. So other questions, I guess. Think about things about beforehand. So we've heard about Constable Wiley having gone to visit 15, 16 times. How well did she know him? What was that all about? Other officers that visited, anybody that she can identify, think of? Anybody see the replica car? Anything like that? Did she ever tell anybody about the replica car? What did she think about it? Did she ever get the sense, did it ever occur to her how dangerous that would be, that the person she knew to be extremely violent and with access to all these firearms also had a replica police vehicle? Did that occur to her? Why didn't she tell anybody about it? What did she think about all that? I think it's fair to ask. What did she think it was going to be for? In an interview that she did, it was the April 28th one, on page 26, line 786. She's just talking about being in the woods. She goes into this truck and then she leaves the truck. And at that time, she says, if he's seen the truck, then maybe he would blow that up. So, Miss, what was that? Sounds like a grenade. Miss Banfield was asked, if she knew about Wortman having grenades. She said no, but just that response, she seems to catch herself, and then the questioning moves on. She seems to catch herself there about to say, throw a grenade. Well, what did she know about all that? She seems to know a little more than she let on. And the other thing that makes me say that is later in the same interview, she's talking about her knowledge of the cross-border smuggling of firearms, which is really the key issue here in terms of access to firearms in the arsenal. I don't know why there's not more attention paid to that. But what does she know about that? She started talking about it a little bit, and then you could tell Staff Sergeant Vardy was starting, the wheels were turning. He's like, wait a second. Maybe she knew more about this cross-border stuff than I thought she did. And he starts, talked about this the other day, giving her this sort of improvised charter warning. Paraphrase the warning, like you could be in trouble. You could talk to somebody, to the point where she starts asking, should I have a lawyer here? And it's too late for that kind of a warning on his side. But then he kind of steered her into saying, oh, actually, well, you probably only overheard things and didn't have any direct knowledge of the cross-border stuff, right? And she's like, oh, yes, of course. No direct knowledge. I just kind of overheard a few things, and that's kind of what he said. He talked about putting it in the cover of the truck. You flip that over and all that stuff. Although we've heard, I think, from other sources that he had places underneath the truck as well, a fake secondary exhaust system, that sort of thing. So what did you know about that? I mean, that would be important to find out. It might inform cross-border security and help keep us safe instead of all these other side issues and the political controversy that's going on over who put pressure on people to identify makes and models of firearms that aren't legal anyway. So all that stuff. So those would be fair questions, I think, for Miss Banfield to answer about sort of pre-event knowledge. And then, there was an article that came out in the Examiner this week about a trip that Wortman made to Pictou County a month beforehand, in March of 2020, to go after a man named Kip McKenzie. This is over a property deal in Fredericton where Kip McKenzie got this piece of property. Wortman seemed to believe he was entitled to it, but anyway, led to probably an attempt to go after, find, and kill this McKenzie guy. And there's some allegation or some theory as well, a credible one, the way I look at it, that on the morning of the 19th, after being at Sean McLeod and Lana Jenkins' home, Wortman then went to Pictou trying again to find Kip McKenzie. So what does she know about that? I think it would be fair to ask her. That was a month beforehand. Is she aware that he went to Pictou, that sort of thing? Good questions there. The event itself, yeah. So any idea why he left you and didn't chase after you more? I mean, that would be a question. I mean, it was very risky. If he had all these plans to go after all these other people and, had all this sort of planned out, thought through, he's going to need some time. And it was very risky to leave a witness behind that might call the police and, short circuit the whole thing. So, does she have any thoughts on that? I think we need to hear what she has to say about that. I mean, it was unusual. Nobody's making any comparisons to other mass shootings where the spouse was left alive as the first victim. Yes, certainly suffered injuries, but left alive. That hasn't been seen before. So what does she think? I think it would be nice to hear what she has to say there. She said she threw her coat off. It was gone. Nobody found it. What does she have to say about that? Slippers. There's a pair of slippers found in Debert next to the police boots and a few other things from Wortman's car where he parked overnight. Size 8, looked like female slippers. Are those hers? Any idea why they were there? That was curious when I heard it. How and when did she hear? I think this is, nothing really turns on this, but I think people are going to want to hear, like, how and when did she hear the scale of events? What does she, does she think about those people? Does she know why Wortman would have targeted each one? What is, I think she needs to go through that and say what she thinks. Tell us what she knows. What did she feel when she heard everything? I think people are going to want to hear her say that, difficult as it may be for her to do so. And, why why didn't she speak out publicly before now? Like, why not go do some sort of a controlled event early on and explain, as she has explained many times since? It doesn't seem like she has a real difficulty explaining what happened to her. In police interviews or whatever, in some controlled environment that could have been released publicly, why wouldn't she come and just say what happened? I mean, yes, there's risk of criminal consequences, but if, everything she has been saying publicly seems designed to help her avoid criminal consequences, I think she could have done that in a public event early on. I think it would have benefited her public reputation and would have made a big difference to many people. So why didn't she do that? I think that's a question. So lots to come tomorrow. There's only so much time to question Miss Banfield, but hopefully we'll get some real answers and some insight into what really happened. Today was a day where we got some insight into what might happen and what is very difficult to predict, but tomorrow, hopefully, we'll hear some facts and some real insight into what took place in the events of April 18th, 19th, 2020. All right, so that's it. So we'll check in with you after that tomorrow. Until then, certainly thank you for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.